are listening on streaming. And I was told by YouTube yesterday that we have got 100 people. Goodness gracious me. I bet there's a few families and friends. So anyway, welcome to Gulf Harbour Radio this morning, everybody. ZMH286, Patricia and David. Where we have an absolutely delightful morning. It's blue swell. It's about 50% cloud cover, but very thin bits and bobs everywhere. Not very tropical. 15 degrees. The wind, what there is, and there's not much here, 0 in fact on the meter, is from the southwest. But the bar is rising as this anticyclone comes to us, 1023.9. We had a really interesting weather system here yesterday. We left, as we do on Sundays, at about 8:15 in the morning to head south. It's only about a 55-minute drive to our shooting range. But we left in absolute glorious blue sky and sunshine. So I opened the windows. And then we got to Auckland and we got to the range, which is, for those that know, Ardmore Airport. It's sort of at the back of there. And the drizzle started. And the drizzle got heavier and heavier. And we had solid rain right through the morning. And we took off about 1 o'clock to come home. And just over the bridge, it all cleared up. And we were back in sunshine again, having had quite heavy rain for the entire morning. And there was just that little, well, as you probably, if you've been looking at the weather, you know there's 2 anticyclones and they're clashing right over Auckland. And we just had this little, we had northerlies, we had these little low right above Auckland, just special for us. Not in Wangapara, which is not very far away. We can see Auckland. But
it was a Murphy special.
There it was. It was a Murphy special just for our Sunday morning outside. So we've had quite funny conditions this morning because I've been able to have a really good chat to Mark and Jude on Four Seasons. They are at 33.33, coming in brilliantly well to the radio. Only 44 miles to Cape Reinga. They're going to continue down to Picton. The others of you have got more wind, well, less wind actually, coming towards New Zealand's Opua and Marsden Cove because you're a bit further to the east. So we'll hear from some of you shortly. Meantime, I'll just do a break before I start on the news. Nothing heard there. All right. There's actually not an awful lot of news. Well, of course, you see, it's still Armistice Day in the rest of the world. We are ahead. We had our Armistice Day yesterday, but there have been a lot of celebrations all around the world for Armistice Day. People that were old enemies getting together. Mr. Macron and Angela Merkel and Mr. Putin and Mr. Trump, they were all actually late for the 11th minute of the 11th hour on this particular day. But anyway, they did arrive as everybody else was having a minute or two silence to commemorate the declaration of the end of World War I. So we... also, by the way, if you are American and you have been a serviceman, it's Veterans Day in America, so you can take your probably breakfast in bed to celebrate or something. So there were a few interesting comments. Mr. Macron, President of France, voiced concern about growing nationalism in the world, which they have been through a period of people working together, and now things are starting to pull apart. Particularly, I think it was a dig at Brexit and Mr. Trump's wanting America first and so on. So there were some rather pointed comments made, but there you have it. Talking about the USA, there's been some dreadful, dreadful fires just north of Sacramento. Virtually a whole town up in the Sierra Nevadas got wiped out, the town of Paradise. 25 people have died, just raging wildfires. Also, a couple further south in Malibu, there's been quite bad fires destroying property. So Mr. Trump again didn't Didn't help his popularity by saying it was bad policies with the forest management and so on. But anyway, it's a bit too late now to make comment on that. All right, there's been there's a prediction of major winter weather occurring in the eastern coast of the United States, starting Monday down the bottom on the southeast side and going through the week up to the northeast. Some pretty grim winter weather to remind them that it is now winter over there. What else have we got? Well, as I say, I was scratching a little bit to give you something of interest. I'm not sure whether this particular item is of interest, but in Egypt, archaeologists have discovered some new unopened tombs. Just amazing how many tombs have been over there. They still continue to find some that have not been got into and emptied, but this ancient tomb, it's about 6,000 years old, has dozens of cat mummies. Evidently, the Egyptians worshipped cats. There is a cat goddess called Bastet, and within this tomb there were 100 statues of cats, as well as all the mummified cats that were there. They had some beautiful wooden and bronze cats. So there you are. See, you don't trip much with cat. Well, they give you.
I love cats.
Oh, you love cats. Well, the cats love him. They come. If we go and visit someone with cats, they always make a beeline for David, even though he
sneeze for an hour.
All right. To show you what our newspapers in the weekend have to wade through, there was an entire 2 columns on a study about teaspoons and how they go missing in cafeterias around the world. This seems to be a worldwide problem. Evidently, within about 70 days, they've put a figure on it now, within about 70 days of new teaspoons arriving, 50% of them are gone. Well, this study, this is something you really need to know, folks. This study showed that it didn't matter whether they were high-quality teaspoons or not. That just any old teaspoon just disappeared. Well, the study didn't actually find where they disappeared to. Some of them were obvious. They ended up on people's desks or whatever. But they did disappear. I have to say that I'm a little bit guilty about that one, not from cafeterias, but when I was young and starving student and went overseas, I would always take the teaspoon from the last flight because my lunch always consisted of yogurt. That was about the cheapest thing you could live on in Europe was yogurt. And so if you had a teaspoon, so still now in my drawer I have teaspoons from all sorts of airlines, some of which are not even in business today. And because after a while I decided this was sort of a good memento of the trip on that particular airline. So I have quite a collection of airline teaspoons, as David can vouch for. Some of them are an interesting shape too. They're instead of the sort of the oval shape, they're a nice little round shape. Okay, well that was the teaspoon article. An interesting one from Western Australia. In Western Australia, where of course it's beautifully fine and sunny a lot of the time, people have solar panels on their roof and they put power back into the national grid. Well, instead of doing that, they now have a group-funded community power storage project whereby groups get together, a bit like the iCloud. Groups get together, in this case 52 shares, 52 households, into the project, and they put the power into these Tesla batteries. They're allowed 8 kilowatt hours each. They pay $1 a day, Australian, to the company to manage it for the year. And then they can just draw power out for no charge at all when they need it. So that's kind of an interesting one, isn't it? Melbourne, on the other side of Australia, bit of Aussie news today, they've found that the Islamic terrorist who went berserk with a knife just after our net on Friday, rampaged through Melbourne's Burke Street, actually killed a Italian restaurateur and quite badly injured a couple of others before he was shot dead. He's been found to have had really close ties to a previous terrorist in Melbourne, so they're asking questions about why these sorts of people are not looked at more closely. Rocket Lab here, we had this beautiful weather, apart from where we were in Auckland. on the weekend. We had lovely Sunday weather, and Rocket Lab launched their first real commercial payload. It's got satellites on board. That was from the Mahia Peninsula over on our east coast. So it's actually controlled by Mission Control in Auckland here at Mount Wellington. We actually passed them, David, when we got lost a couple of weeks ago when we left the Panmure area, across the bridge, and just in there is Mount Wellington. And I forgot to point out to you the Rocket Lab building. That's where Mission Control is. Bill Schnettler opened it up a couple of weeks ago. And that's about it, really. We have also, there was some interesting comments about when you are best in your lifetime to do certain things. For example, learning a language evidently peaks. Your ability to do this well peaks at age 7, which is why a lot of people send their kids to language schools, because you can pick it up evidently very, very well if you are 7. And I can assure you, the older you get, the more difficult it is. Anyway, if you want to learn new names, people's names, when you're introduced, that ability peaks when you are 22. Good news for some of you, your arithmetic skills peak at 50, which I thought was older than I expected, which is probably why a lot of mathematicians are older than you would think. Arithmetic skills peaking at 50. Your vocabulary peaks at 69. I guess there's hope for many of you out there. And for all of us, your psychological well-being feeling peaks at 82. I guess if you are feeling a bit down, you've probably died off before then. But anyway, they probably have less of a group to study, but your psychological well-being peaks at 82. So there you are. If you're having a bit of a down day, you just have to wait a little bit longer. And for those of you who are going to be travelling when you get to New Zealand, buying a car, you might have to come back in a few years' time. The very dreadful part of the road between the north and, for example, us here in Auckland, is between Puhoi and Warkworth. It's an absolute grim road, and it's now being worked on. It's a joint venture between a Spanish company and Fletcher Building here in New Zealand, who are borderline going broke all the time. But anyway, hopefully they'll all keep working.
A Spanish company.
A Spanish company.
A Spanish company.
Yes. And so...
And they expect work out of a Spanish company.
They expect work out of a Spanish company, yes. They, well, I guess that they have to stop for... When do they start? They work until they eat quite late. So, yeah, but anyway, they maybe stop in the middle of the day, and that's when the Fletcher's people take over. Anyway, that road will be done, and it will be make it a lot easier, for example, Belpala Radio, Patricia and David, to get up to visit you guys in Whangarei. It's absolutely shocking road at the moment. Anyway, that's on the go, and it won't affect the road at the moment because it's to the west of the main road. It just ploughs through farmland and hills and all the rest of it. It's a major, major job. It's only about 20 k's, but it's a pretty major undertaking. Okay, all right, I'm going to do a bit of a pause. I think what we'll do is go on to the weather. It will be good to know who's left where, and I've just seen that there's somebody waiting at Bunda. We know there's a group of you waiting in Bunda to go north. I think, David, are you going to cover that today? Anyway, you probably won't want to do it for a while by the look of the satellite picture, but anyway, we know there's a group waiting in Bundit or in the western side of Oz to go to the Marshalls. We know Gone With the Wind has left Minerva, and we know that there is a boat waiting in Bundit to come to here. So if you are somewhere else, you'd better let us know, because we are going to be tailoring to what we know now that most of the folk that we do know of are pretty much here, or at least on their way. So I'll just do a pause to see if there's any more information on that topic. Well, if you are out there and you're too shy to pick up the radio microphone, then just let us know, ghradio@extra.co.nz, and we will certainly include you, your situation. Scoots say it's sunny up there in Dinnerau. Citrus Tart, good morning to you guys. It's 100% cloud and rain over there in Suva. So that's, David's just pointing that out to me. All right, so there's a couple of boats waiting for the next window, and here's David to talk about everything.
Well, I don't know. You talked about everything pretty much. Good report. Okay, good morning, everybody, and we're going to examine the good old 500 millibar chart for this morning. Now, we've got a lightweight ridge over New Zealand, and that continues off to the east for just a wee bit. Then we have a very sharp shortwave trough that's over the Tasman, and I think now we're just going to very quickly shift to the surface analysis chart. Just give you the brief upper level so you have an idea what the 500 flow is doing. But the surface chart, well, for lack of a better word, it's a bit of a mess. On either side of New Zealand, as Patricia had mentioned, we have two high centers. And this is common to have happen here in the New Zealand area. Anyhow, each of these centers has got a fairly high central pressure between 1026 and 1030 millibar. Now, as you can picture, the way that these rotate, you can see that we're going to have opposing surface flows where they come together. And that all happens directly over New Zealand. Now, the small low that Patricia talked about as well, that is a result of these two air masses coming together, different densities, and with upper level activity, we had that small low form. Now, it's situated near Taranaki right now, which is just north and west of Wellington. And we have two quasi-stationary troughs that spread out from the low, sort of like the arms of a ballet dancer, if you will. One reaches west toward Hervey Bay, and the other one east toward the dateline. So if you could picture that, that's pretty much what we have for this morning. Now, the subtropical low that we talked about on Friday, and a number of you were concerned about it, it's still present and accounted for, but located near 28 and 170 west, 28 and 170. So the worry about it coming to New Zealand, we tried to explain that that wasn't going to happen, and it's not. So that's good news. But it does send a couple of troughs across the cruising route from, well, actually the cruising route from Tonga to New Zealand. We do have another trough from the system that arcs over Niue, and then that's the one that goes over Fiji and on to northern Vanuatu. So it's causing a little bit of havoc, but not directly, more indirectly. Looking at yachts that are still on passage and nearing New Zealand, we've talked to a few this morning, and we've gotten emails from a few of those. So the winds from basically North Cape to Opua are going to be southerlies around 15 knots, 15 knots, give or take on that. Off of Cape Reinga or North Cape toward New Caledonia, we're looking at southeast, about 15 to 20 knots, and virtually the same thing tomorrow. Wednesday, I think southeast winds will prevail 15 to 20 knots, and there are going to be possible showers out of this. Now, our front over the weekend, that's the one that many of you raced in and beat it. Actually, you got in before it arrived, and it didn't actually amount to a hill of beans in terms of strong wind, but it was there, and it did provide a fair amount of rain, actually. But that front has broken. We talked about it doing that, becoming disassociated with the parent low, which is a little bit further to the south. But if you were to look at satellite imagery, you'll see it. A large part of it is still over the North Island, and then if you continue to look at your imagery, it continues to the northwest, right into the Coral Sea, actually just to the west, just very close to New Caledonia. And it's fairly broad, and there is rain in this. We've got some very high cloud, a very cold cloud, and from that we are going to see showers and squalls. Now, those who left Fiji over the weekend, if you're now at about 20 south, you could expect east-southeast 15 to 20, but you're going to run into a disturbance by Wednesday, I think, and that's going to be created by a polar dip, and that's fairly obvious in some of the prods that we're looking at, and that dip is going to be somewhere between Vanuatu and Fiji. So the winds between 20 and 25 south by Wednesday are going to be essentially easterlies, give or take on that, but there is going to be fairly heavy convective activity, and that includes squalls. Now, cloud and rain is going to continue under this dip right through Friday, and we are going to have cyclonic winds en route in that area. Now, the models disagree on the location of this disturbance. They don't disagree on the fact that it will be there. It will. It's just exactly where that we've got a little bit of controversy. So GFS, as an example, is calling it for Thursday due south of Fiji, whereas EC is calling it just to the southwest of Fiji. Doesn't make much of a difference, really. If you're en route, you're still going to have the result of it, which is going to be cloud and rain. Now, our twin highs here in New Zealand, they look to continue straddling New Zealand into Thursday, and they're going to retain strength at about 1029 millibar, and that is going to create a swash zone to their north. So between the disturbance that we just talked about, doesn't matter exactly where it is, but between that disturbance and New Zealand, we're going to have 20 to 25 knot easterlies, and give or take on that direction. And that's all due to the swash. So that's a pretty good wind direction, but it's going to make for some bumpy riding, that's for sure. Now, by the coming weekend, winds are going to turn northeasterly as the next depression is nearing New Zealand, and our highs are shifting east at that time. And that's per GFS, but EC actually delays the low, and it is going to, if that's true, it's going to provide quite unwanted southerlies from 30 south to New Zealand. And that'll be over the weekend right through Monday, a week from now. Monday, I think, the 19th. So if EC is correct, and you're still out there between 30 and New Zealand headwinds. However, if GFS winds up being correct, then things will be a little bit different. So we'll know in a day or so what's going to happen. And as a result of all this, well, you know we don't give advice here, but, well, if you're contemplating a passage and you have a disturbance or a low to your north, a subtropical low, and you have a very strong high to the south, that may not be the soundest idea to plan a passage. Now, this may not amount to a hill of beans, but it's always, in my view, a fairly iffy situation when you have got a depression to the north and a strong high to the south. We try to avoid that like the plague, actually. But again, we'll know a little bit more in a day or so. Looking now at the tropics themselves, I see a lot of convective activity. In fact, convective activity galore up there. An active trough runs from the Solomons to a weak tropical depression. Yep, it's a tropical depression. Very, very weak. Doesn't have a name or a number, but it's there. Then the trough continues on to Fiji and Tonga. And we have another trough that runs from Tuvalu, goes to Tokelau, and then it goes on to the northern Cooks. But I can tell you it's quite nasty between 160 east and the date line in the deep tropics. A number of mesoscale convective complexes are visible, as is that forming tropical depression. And that's located near 5 South and 165 East. So those of you that are heading north toward Margereau, or anyway, places north, keep a real sharp look at the weather. It's not a good idea to be sailing into these MCSs. They're clusters of CBs, thunderstorms, if you will, and they usually have some fairly hefty, vicious type squalls that are part and parcel of them. So it's just a no fun situation. So at the moment, if it were us, we probably would be thinking twice about making our way north. Over in Tonga, we have got that trough mentioned, fairly broad, affecting Babao mostly, more so than the Hapais and Tongatapu. But for all of the areas, expect cloud and showers, typical trough conditions, really, especially this time of the year, that we're practically mid-November, and it is cyclone season, so the weather is changing, so you have to take care for sure. Early airport conditions confirm earlier rain for Babao. Light air, though, barometer 1012. The winds by lunch today, I would say southeast around 15, and they'll be tending east-southeast by Wednesday in the 15 knot range. And by Friday and Saturday, I would expect continued inclement weather. Easterlies are going to be clashing with southwesterlies, so not particularly strong as far as wind strength goes, but the clashing is going to create cloud showers, squally conditions. Fiji now continues with its very slow-moving trough. Areas in the group can expect rain and thunderstorms today and tomorrow, and there are breaks, as Patricia mentioned. In fact, we heard today on the radio areas that are really not that far apart. One's got fair weather, and the other's got cloud and drizzle. Fiji Met now has issued a strong wind warning for all waters, with east to southeast winds 20 to 25 knots. Now, the winds are going to tend east-southeast to maybe easterlies tomorrow, and then picking up a little bit more on Wednesday, while shifting to the northeast in the western sections, and westerly quadrant winds on Thursday and Friday, as more trough activity is going to make itself known. It's going to be a period where it's going to be a bit uncomfortable up there. Vanuatu looks fine on satellite imagery. The edge of the major trough lies just to the east of the group, and a very good microwave pass this morning gave me some nice wind output to tell you, and we're looking at east, southeast, 15 to 20. Now tomorrow shows a bit of an increase, though. We're looking at southeast, I think, about 25 knots from Anisham up to Afate, and then northerly winds driving into these southeasters, creating trough conditions and possible tropical low formation. Again, we're not really sure where this disturbance is going to wind up forming, but somewhere up there, so we'll keep our eyes open and report as we see it. New Caledonia on imagery is a mix of fine weather and cloud, the movement of those bands northwest to southeast, and by lunchtime, you can expect easterlies 18 to 20 knots in our lagoon area, partly cloudy. Tomorrow, east-southeast 15 to 20, and Wednesday we're looking at southeast in the 15 knot range. And conditions this morning, a bit of wind, east 23 knots at Amity Light, 23 knots. Ile de Pan, east-northeast at 15, Noumea easterlies at 20. And over there in the Loyalties, averaging out the winds east-southeast about 18. So that's the story. As I see it, the people that have left Minerva Reef, person, one vote, 2 boats, we don't know. But anyway, today, southeast about 15, making your way to New Zealand. Tomorrow, southeast about 15 to 20. And on Wednesday, east to east-southeast, about 15 to 20. You're going to get wind on Thursday, depending upon where you are, how fast you're going. Possibly easterlies 20 to 25. So we're going to have a day of quite a bit of wind. And then on Friday, as you get near New Zealand, or you're making landfall, and you should be by Friday, easterlies about 15 knots for the arrival conditions. So that's it, folks. Again, we'd like to know who's left up in the islands, and we'll go from there. So if you've got questions or comments as well, come now. And here's the chief.
All right. Well, we do know that some of you cannot make contact, and good morning to Ichiban. You might be almost out of our range now. We know you left Fiji a week ago, and you do about 100 miles a day, so getting very close to not hearing us. All right, we've got a few boats that we know about that want to leave. Just Jane, Scoots, Tristart, amongst, I think they're the only ones I really know about. Anyway, I'll have to look through the list again. Is there anybody out there with any other questions, or to let us know that you are still out there? Please call. Anybody with anything? Well, that seems to be about it. So we'll go and enjoy our lovely sunny day out here, calm down here, and we will be back again tomorrow with a similar sort of fairly flexible roundup based on who we know. So have a good day, everybody, and we will be back again tomorrow. This is Patricia and David wishing you a good day, and the frequency is now all yours. I was busy reading